Charles Hughesmith is an author and economics blogger with a readership of over 20 million people. In our conversation, we talk about the role of cooperation in economics and the borrow and spend culture of most fiscal regimes. All right, Ian, so one question that I like to start off asking people is just, do you have any sort of like guiding principles or anything that you refer to in your sort of approach to business that you think over the years has guided a lot of your actions and your thinking?
Well, I think there probably are several things. One in our business, which we've been conducting now for quite a few years with under two different umbrellas, is high values within our company and working with people whose values we also respect. Working with people that we actually want to work with is pretty critical to us.
Okay.
Personally, I'm someone that likes actions to sort of speak for themselves. And so in a typical British way, I guess, we tend to undersell rather than oversell.
Okay.
And I think we do that both corporately and hopefully as individuals.
Okay. So being subtle, as it were.
Subtle, yes.
Okay, well, so the first question that I wanted to ask you about was, we talk about in the course a little bit about, taking a partnership approach to negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just wondering, in your experience, placing folks in relatively, high stakes positions, do you find that, when it comes to negotiating the contracts, etc., that both sides do tend to take a partnership approach, or do you find that sometimes it is a little bit more, about sort of dividing the pie, etc.?
I think that most of our clients are public companies,
Mm-hmm.
and the positions are very senior. So 50% of the roles that we fill are on the board. So whatever deal is finally negotiated is going to be on public record. Mm. And so both sides have to live with that. Both the company in terms of justifying to its shareholders and other stakeholders what it's given someone to take on a key role. And I think for the individual too, that they negotiated something that not only, I guess, reflects their skills and experience and negotiating position, but also that they were somewhat mindful of the realities that face businesses today, where there can be a lot of media interest and investor interest in deals that are negotiated, and huge criticism if things are considered to be inappropriate.
Okay, so there's some sort of almost like political sort of type of considerations that go into
it. A political reality. So, it's not uncommon, particularly where we're moving people across borders, for a candidate to say to us, I need X, Y, and Z if I'm going to make this sort of a move, or perhaps even more dangerously coming up with something in the late stages saying that I also need X, Y, or Z. And we have to go back and counsel them and say that, this is not a reasonable request in the current environment, or just not possible in the current environment, and this is why. And I guess most often people they'll push back and they might try and, come at it a slightly different angle. But mostly they will accept the realities of the situation.
And then, so when it comes to like the number coming out, or a key figure, whether that be related to gross compensation or another quantifiable something like that, do you find that people tend to, in your in the good negotiations in which you've been a part, do you find that they, I guess, what's a good? Are there like tactics there where people sort of try to lowball and then sort of work their way up? Do you find people to be straightforward? What do you find to be the healthiest approach to those pretty hard number type of negotiating points?
Well, I think that clearly we need to understand when we take an assignment into the marketplace what the likely realities are of the sort of compensation deal one of our clients can cut. We don't take a number into the market at the sort of level that we're operating, so we never approach people and say the salary or the compensation for this package for this role is X £1,000 or dollars. But knowing what our clients, what their pain barrier is likely to be, what the realities of the situation are, we would flag up to our clients pretty early on if we saw someone was on a compensation package or had a real ambition to earn a certain level of compensation that was going to be a problem. Because clearly we don't want to get into, we don't want to waste people's time, and we don't want to find out at the 11th hour that there's not going to be a meeting of minds on the compensation package. So I guess all the way through we're trying to be realistic, to set expectations on both sides, and so that our client doesn't come up with a silly number when they start talking turkey. And that also the candidates, don't have unrealistic expectations of what might be doable.
So, can you tell a story? I know you have to withhold, sensitive information because you're dealing with lots of sensitive situations. Where you felt like, let's say that the candidate and the employer really, you respected the way that they handled, the talking turkey, as you said, type of situation.
Mm-hmm. I guess. There were two very senior roles that we carried out for a financial services business in the last sort of 15 months. Were both happening at the same time, and I think were handled or sort of approached in quite different ways. The first one was, for an individual who was going to be taking on a financial position at the center of the company. And, someone who's very pragmatic, really wanted the job. It was going to be definitely a move upwards for them. And as long as the company came up with a compensation figure that they felt was in the right ballpark, was not going to argue it. Mm-hmm. And it was a relatively straightforward deal, because this individual was aware of what the compensation that had been paid to the predecessor in the role. And even though the numbers were pretty high, it was a relatively smooth negotiation.
So both were pretty much aware of the market value and things like that.
Market value, and we had a good sense of what it would take to move this individual, and we felt that it was going to be within the parameters that our client had a pretty good idea they were going to have to operate in. And we'll be able to take to the board, and it wouldn't be a huge deal, and it wasn't. The other role was senior, but it was less obvious what the compensation package was of the incumbent. And also it was a part of the market that were, this person's skills and experience that was becoming pretty hot. And we were moving them, from one geography to another.
So a lot of unknowns.
So quite a lot of unknowns, and our client didn't start off with the right number, and slightly got themselves backed into a corner, thinking that that they could move this individual for a number which I didn't think was realistic, and proved not to be realistic. And this individual, very high integrity, and not someone who's in any sense out to get the last dollar or cent, but clearly wanted a deal that was going to reflect their value in the market today. Was being approached on other propositions, which sort of underscored what that value was. And so in this circumstance, the HR director, recognized where there was a gap, and I think in a quite a brave way took what the new deal needed to be to the board of the company and got it cleared quite quickly, but put their own reputation slightly on the line, but were correct and came up with the right deal, and we then managed to get the deal closed.
Do you see a lot of sort of like win-win trade-offs happening in these compensation, negotiations? Where they'll say, oh, that's, the company will say, that's not a big deal to me if that's a big deal to you. The candidate will say, oh, well, that's not a big deal to me if that's a big deal to you. Does that type of behavior happen a lot?
A little.
A little, okay.
And so it's very common. I think, a lot of the compensation packages today at a senior level, the final compensation is going to be determined by performance. So these are going to be share-related schemes that will have, unlike the US, much more performance orientated in the UK and in the European marketplace. Right, so rather than stock grants, which basically you only have to serve out your time and the restricted stock and the stock vests, here you not only have to be in position in 3 or 4 years' time, but the value that will vest will be dependent upon the performance of the company in absolute terms, but also relative to its peers.
Mm.
And so it is therefore deemed to be a win-win that, if the company and the shareholders do well, then the executive will do well. I mean, the reality, the fact is that they're still a bit of a turkey shoot. And depending on where you start off. So obviously, if a company's share price is depressed and it's done very poorly for the last few years, then if you go in under those circumstances, then at the end of 3 or 4 years, if you've done a halfway good job and you get the company back on track, you could make out extremely well. But not having performed really in absolute terms better than someone who happened to be chief executive of a company that had been performing well through that period, but in relative terms hadn't done so well. Mm-hmm. But it is deemed to be a win-win. I think the key is that compensation packages should be seen to be fair and capable of retaining top talent over a long period of time. Mm-hmm. And, things that just allow you to recruit someone, but then you lose them again in 3 or 4 years' time. It might look a good headline when you've recruited them, but it doesn't look so clever when they disappear after collecting the first set of stock that vests with them. I mean, one of the things that we have seen on very senior appointments is where an individual is prepared to invest in stock up front and then get some sort of leverage on that stock. I think that is a win-win, where people put their own money on the table, will buy 250,000, 500,000 pounds worth of shares, and will get matching shares or some leveraged amount of shares by the company, granted. And the investors quite like those deals.
Okay, so that's kind of a creative solution to, sweeten it up. So, my next question was centered around, the sort of psychological stakes of, at the individual and the company level in these negotiations. And it sounds like sustainability or feeling good about the deal so that people stay around is probably one of the most important. Are there any other sort of psychological factors that you see happening in these situations?
Well, I guess, for us as someone who's in the middle of these transactions, if this is of interest, in a way we have two clients. We have our client, the corporation that's paying our fee, But we're also very conscious of our reputation with the candidates because, by definition, we're dealing with senior people. These people are going to be around for a long time. They're likely to move on at some point in their career, and so they're going to want to feel that they dealt with a firm that handled them in an appropriate way and handled the situation in an appropriate way.
So the process itself needs to be.
The process needs to be handled carefully, and I think for potential candidates in these sort of processes, I find it enormously instructive how well the individuals handle themselves. So, in fact, I just sent an email to a colleague of mine today telling them about a candidate I'm dealing with on a board role who has been very timely in coming back to us, who has been very clear in terms of what they want and what their priorities are, and how refreshing it was.
So maybe that's interesting. I mean, the way that you handle yourself in the negotiations maybe is sending signals to the parties around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, we all go through the interview process with us, and then they go through the interview process with our client. But I find it hugely instructive about how the candidate handles not only that part of it, but also subsequently, when there's a second or a third round of interviews. And so, how timely they are in their communications, that they don't mess people around, that they're quite clear about what their position is. These things are very important, and some people, usually the best people in the at the final analysis, do that better than others. And
Maybe kind of showing that they're allocating their bandwidth well.
Exactly,
This
yeah,
kind of stuff.
exactly. And for us, we're also trying to be very straightforward with people about where they are in the process because. At the end of the day, our job is to ensure that our client, we deliver a candidate at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And, inevitably in these processes, people have choices.
Mm-hmm.
And the preferred candidate may not be the successful candidate because, the company may have a late change of heart, hopefully not. But the individual may decide quite late in the day, sometimes incredibly late in the day, that, what, their wife doesn't want to make the move, their family doesn't want to move, or they've decided to take another position or stay put. And in those circumstances, hopefully you're going to have in your back pocket as the recruiter the option.
Mm-hmm.
And so to keep, two very good candidates in play going through this process is quite an art, and sometimes you try and be pretty transparent with people and say that there may be a preferred candidate, that these people are also seen as strong candidates, maybe not the first choice, or maybe they want to run another person through the process first. You play it in many different ways, but I think. Someone who's in a process shouldn't feel in any way slighted by that, by knowing that they may not be the only game in town, and they may not even be at this particular point in time, the preferred game in town.
Mm-hmm.
But, just be pragmatic about it.
And it's just part of the deal.
Part of the deal. And I can think of, circumstances for a number of clients where in the end the person who was not seen as the initial preferred candidate has got the job. Mm-hmm. And has been a huge success, and the company has been counting their blessings that they got the person that they did.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another question I wanted to ask you is, like, when you're working with some of these folks, I know that you're working with senior folks who have been in interview rounds and in these high pressure situations in the past. I mean, what advice do you have for people, to sort of mentally prepare themselves to go into a sort of high stakes negotiation meeting?
Well, are you talking about a negotiation meeting or are you talking about the interview meeting?
I guess more the negotiation. Let's, when you really
Well,
start to go in and start talking turkey, as you said earlier. I mean, how do you tell people to think about that, prepare for that?
first of all, we, wherever possible, we would handle that negotiation
Okay.
because we think it's actually not a very good starting point for a future employer-employee relationship to have difficult negotiations and sometimes some tough things being said. It's much easier if that's handled slightly neutralized through a third party like
Totally.
this. But that's not always the case. Sometimes clients like to handle it direct. I think the important thing is to be realistic and really, one way or another, assess where the client is likely to be coming from.
Okay.
Because I think if you go in there with unrealistic expectations, unrealistic demands, that it just doesn't do you any good in terms of your credibility.
Yeah. Okay. So by accurately assessing maybe where the other party's coming from, not only do you get better preparation yourself, but you build your credibility if you
Yeah.
show them that you're on sort of solid ground or whatever.
Yeah, so we would. So if for some reason, if the client does want to handle it directly, I think that it's perfectly in order to say to the recruiter, "Okay, you're in the marketplace all the time. You tell me where you think this job should be positioned in compensation terms, and if you have a very different view from the recruiter, it makes sense, I think, to sort of." Really bat it backwards and forwards a little bit to really sense check what your position is.
Where they're getting their figures and sort of
Yeah,
investigate where they're coming from.
before you get into the discussion with the client.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Um,
So yeah, I guess my final question for you was, I know you guys do a lot of cross-cultural type of placements. So I just was hoping that you could share a story with the people watching about, when you thought that somebody handled a particularly sensitive cross-cultural type of integration well.
so I think that something I touched on a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do as recruiters is not just talk to the potential candidate, but we do talk to the candidate, but we really need to understand what his personal situation, what his family situation is, because where you're moving someone, and this I think is as true moving domestically within the US as it is moving internationally. If a man or a woman has got a partner and a family, these sort of moves have pretty serious implications for them too.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would be amazed how often negotiations will get to a fairly advanced stage before a candidate sort of then thinks to mention it to their family that they're thinking of taking a job in another city or another country. And the family suddenly say, well, actually, no, you're not. Or,
Yeah.
right, we're not going with you. So one of the things that I think, has been handled well by our clients, and this is just not a one-off,
Mm-hmm.
but is being prepared to fly partners across, in our case, often we're moving people to London, flying the partners to London, arranging for them to be taken around to look at housing, the sort of housing that these people could expect to move into, getting them interviews at a range of schools that they might move their children into, and really holding their hand through that process, which I also personally stay very close to because I know how critical it is, and these moves can stand or fall on that experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact, just 18 months ago when I was moving a family from the US to London, the individual that I wanted to move, their wife said, the meeting that was arranged for me at the particular school that I visited was critical as to whether or not I was prepared to make the move. And if they hadn't made the move, then the candidate wasn't going to make the move.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our client did a great job, preparing to invest a bit of time and certainly some money in making sure that the family situation was taken care of, as well as the candidate's own demands for the role and the compensation.
So in terms of the cross-cultural sensitivity, it's just introducing the other stakeholders involved into what they're going to be, what they're going to be experiencing from the cultural shift.
Yeah, and being absolutely realistic about it. Another move that,
so it's not just sugarcoating it.
Not sugarcoating, that I wasn't really involved in, although I had some part in, was moving another senior individual to India. Which is a tough marketplace to go into.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was handled well. When the client understood what the individual's demands were going to be, again, by this individual first being prepared to wait until, in this case, a child had gone off to college, and that this couple would then be free of dependent children being at home.
Mm-hmm.
So being prepared to be patient for 6 months until that had happened. But then also being prepared to put a fixed term on the move, so that again they as a couple knew that they would be taking on very interesting assignment, but quite challenging in terms of the physical move.
Mm-hmm. Totally new experience.
Totally new experience, but it was going to be for a 2-year period, and then would be at their option whether they stayed for another year. Mm-hmm. And that was getting the client, who originally was looking for a 3-year commitment, into a different place. And, because realistically, if the person wasn't happy at the end of 2 years, they weren't going to stay for 3 years anyway, whatever contract they might have signed. So, but I think by doing it that way, by just giving them the 2-year signpost and then allowing them to decide if they stay for another year, made all the difference.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks so much, Ian. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Good luck with the master's program. Sounds wonderful.